Write complete story in part 1 under 1 response limit. Ignore count words. Little girl's voice was soft, innocent, and completely unexpected, yet it stopped one of the most powerful women in the city in her tracks. Standing in the bright afternoon sunlight outside a children's charity center, Billionaire CEO Celeste Rowan froze as a tiny hand pointed toward the antique sapphire ring she had worn every single day for almost 20 years. Then came the sentence that drained every bit of color from her face. "Ma'am, my dad has a ring exactly like yours." In that instant, a memory Celeste had buried beneath years of success, heartbreak, and endless work came rushing back, threatening to unravel a secret she believed had disappeared forever. Before this emotional journey continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the incredible power of love, please like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the Dad Chronicles so you never miss another unforgettable story. At 42, Celeste Rowan had built one of the country's largest technology companies from a tiny apartment with nothing but determination and sleepless nights. Business magazines called her unstoppable. Financial newspapers admired her fearless leadership. Television interviews praised her intelligence and discipline. Yet none of those headlines ever mentioned the loneliness waiting for her every evening when she returned to a luxurious penthouse that echoed with silence. Success had given her everything except the one thing she quietly missed most, a family. 20 years earlier, before the boardrooms, private jets, and international awards, Celeste had been an ambitious architecture student spending a summer volunteering at a community renovation project. There she met a cheerful engineering apprentice named Everett Sloan, a young man whose optimism seemed impossible to exhaust. He carried old tools instead of expensive watches and believed every broken building deserved another chance. They fell deeply in love during long afternoons restoring neglected homes, dreaming about a future they were certain would belong to them. Before leaving for separate internships, they exchanged matching sapphire rings purchased from a tiny antique shop. They promised never to remove them until they found each other again. Life, however, had different plans. A devastating highway accident left Everett hospitalized for months while Celeste, believing he had chosen to disappear after receiving no letters, buried herself in work to survive the heartbreak. Unknown to either of them, every letter Everett had written was sent to an apartment Celeste had already left, while every letter she mailed arrived after Everett's family relocated during his recovery. Time quietly transformed misunderstanding into permanent silence. 2 decades later, Celeste dedicated part of her company's annual charity program to funding after-school education centers. She insisted on personally visiting one newly renovated center on a bright Saturday afternoon. The children welcomed her with handmade paintings, cheerful songs, and endless curiosity. She smiled more during those 2 hours than she usually smiled in an entire month. Among the children was a lively 7-year-old girl named Harper Sloan. She carried a notebook filled with colorful drawings of bridges, trees, and smiling stick figures. While everyone gathered outside for refreshments, Harper noticed the sapphire ring sparkling in the sunlight. She stared at it for several seconds before walking directly toward Celeste with complete confidence. Without realizing the storm her innocent observation would create, she quietly mentioned that her father owned a ring exactly like it and wore it every day because it reminded him never to stop believing that true promises eventually found their way home. Those words echoed through Celeste's heart like thunder. She gently asked Harper where her father worked. The answer shocked her even further. Harper explained that Everett restored historic buildings across the city and often volunteered at community projects because he believed every damaged place deserved another beginning. The sentence sounded almost identical to something Everett himself had said 20 years earlier. Celeste could hardly breathe. She politely ended the visit, returned to her car, and sat silently for nearly an hour. For the first time in years, quarterly profits, investor meetings, and billion-dollar contracts seemed completely insignificant compared to one impossible question. Could it really be him? After days of hesitation, Celeste quietly asked her assistant to locate Everett Sloan. She expected to discover someone who had long forgotten the past. Instead, she learned that Everett had never married. He had become Harper's adoptive father after losing his younger sister to a sudden illness 5 years earlier. Rather than allowing his niece to enter foster care, he immediately became her legal guardian despite struggling financially. He had devoted every spare dollar and every free afternoon to raising her with unconditional love. The discovery overwhelmed Celeste. The man she had once believed abandoned her had instead spent decades quietly keeping promises in different ways. She arranged a visit to one of Everett's restoration sites under the excuse of discussing a potential corporate partnership. The meeting took place beneath warm afternoon sunshine inside an old library undergoing careful restoration. Time had added silver to Everett's hair and gentle lines around his eyes, but the kindness in his expression remained exactly the same. Before either of them spoke, both noticed the sapphire rings. Neither had removed them. Years of misunderstanding dissolved in a single silent moment. As they slowly shared what had happened, every missing letter, every wrong address, every painful assumption finally made heartbreaking sense. Neither had chosen to leave. Neither had stopped loving the other. Life had simply placed enough distance between them for silence to grow louder than hope. There was sadness in realizing how many years had been lost, but there was also relief. The resentment they had unknowingly carried disappeared because there had never been betrayal. Over the following months, Celeste became a regular visitor at the community center where Harper spent her afternoons. She never tried to replace anyone in the little girl's life. Instead, she became someone Harper could trust, encouraging her love for art and architecture while listening to endless stories about school, friends, and dreams. Harper, completely unaware that she had reunited two broken hearts, simply enjoyed having another caring adult cheering her on. Everett and Celeste also began rebuilding what time had interrupted. They did not pretend the lost years had never happened. Instead, they honored them by appreciating every ordinary afternoon they now shared together. They walked through parks, visited restoration projects, and laughed about memories that somehow remained vivid despite the passing decades. One sunny afternoon, Celeste surprised Everett by funding the complete restoration of the small community workshop where they had first met as students. Rather than placing her company name above the entrance, she insisted on a simple plaque that read, "Some promises never truly fade. They only wait for the right moment to return." The workshop soon became a place where retired craftsmen taught young people practical skills free of charge. Families gathered there every weekend, creating furniture, repairing bicycles, and restoring old keepsakes that held priceless memories. Months later, during the workshop's grand reopening, Harper proudly unveiled a framed drawing she had secretly created. It showed 3 people standing beneath a bright blue sky, all wearing matching sapphire rings while rebuilding an old house together. Above them she had written, in careful handwriting, "The strongest homes are built with love." Many guests wiped away tears. Even Celeste, whose composure had impressed investors for years, could no longer hide her emotions. She finally understood that success was never measured by company valuations or magazine covers. Real success was measured by the people whose lives became brighter because someone chose kindness instead of bitterness, forgiveness instead of blame, and hope instead of regret. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to the Dad Chronicles for more emotional stories that remind us of the beauty still waiting in the world. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. What do you believe is more powerful, true love, forgiveness, or destiny? Leave your answer in the comments below because your words may inspire someone who needs hope today. A year later, under the warm afternoon sun in the same community garden where Harper had first noticed the matching rings, friends, neighbors, volunteers, and children gathered for a simple celebration. There were no luxury decorations, no famous guests, and no extravagant speeches. There were only grateful hearts, genuine smiles, and 3 lives forever changed by one innocent observation from a little girl who had noticed 2 identical rings. As Celeste looked at Everett and Harper laughing together, she realized that the greatest miracle had never been finding the man she once loved. The real miracle was discovering that time could not erase a promise built on sincerity. Some stories are delayed, not denied. Some families are formed in unexpected ways. And sometimes, all it takes to change the course of a lifetime is one child brave enough to speak the simple truth that everyone else had overlooked.